In this video, we are going to learn how to create this amazing, beautiful and detailed employee attendance report using Power BI. We are going to understand how to build cards like this that show the employee picture, their details, as well as an interactive calendar view and a KPI area underneath here. Everything we build will be dynamic. So if I select a different month, for example, right now we are on February. If I go to March, I'll see the calendar for March. I'll see the updated employee details and the KPIs. The key ingredient of this beautiful report is the SVG based DAX measures. I've covered how to build the basic SVG measures in the previous part of this two-part series video. So in the previous part, we understood how to build SVG measures like this. A simple rectangle that shows how much is a number along with the percentage inside. The rectangle itself is sized based on how big the number is. Today, we are going to expand on those SVG concepts as well as solve some really tricky data challenges that you will face when you're trying to build a attendance report like this. So this is what we are going to do. Let's start from the scratch and understand what our data is and set up a project design high-level view and then go ahead and implement this. So here is our data. This is a very simple data set of employee attendance. It is in a matrix or a grid format. We have got 25 employees, so each employee takes up one column of data. So for example, this is AC2401's column. And for every date, we know whether they're present, they're sick, they are on a vacation, or they're working from remote locations. And this kind of goes on for all the days. So we have data up to 30th of April 2025, but you could really have any amount of data. This kind of data format is easy to maintain. So if you have got a spreadsheet where you're tracking your employees or your shifts or anything else, deliveries or whatever, this is easy to maintain. But when it comes to doing actual data analysis and business intelligence reporting, this is a bit of pain to actually work with. We also have a supporting dimension table called employee data, where for each employee, I know what their name is, what team they belong to. We've got a four or five teams and their headshot images. So each one is an image. I'm going to show you how one of these images looks like. This is Men8. These are images that I made up using open source images on the online. So this is their employee profile picture. All these images are hosted online. That is the key thing to remember. All right, so what we want to do next is design a attendance report like this. I want to give a hat tip to a Tableau dashboard that I saw on LinkedIn a while ago, from which I took inspiration for this. So this is the Tableau dashboard from Sean Ademayo and Adeyemo, and this is how they have designed it. All of this is made in Tableau. We are actually going to do this in Power BI. Feel free to check out this page as well. I'll leave a link to this in the video description if you want to know more about this. So we are going to build all of this in a blank Power BI file. But before we build that, especially whenever you are attempting to create a BI report or a dashboard that is a bit more complicated, it's a good idea to design the whole thing on a paper before you do that. So I'm going to do a bit of design for this. Let me just do a bit of whiteboard here. So we're going to use OneNote to actually design this, but you can use pen and paper as well. So here is our inspiration. This is the dashboard from Tableau that I took. Let's start with our data. We have got data in an Excel file, data. And this can be Excel file, this can be a time tracking system or something else as well. It doesn't really have to be that. But for the sake of this project, we are using Excel file. Now, the key challenges are the data itself is in a clumsy format. So we need to actually transform this data and design a set of tables. So the next step in our project would be, I'm going to call this as DP, that is data preparation. Here, what we want to do is clean the data and make dimensions tables. So we have got one employee dimension table, but we need to introduce a calendar table if we want to make a calendar design, as well as maybe the attendance codes themselves need to be separated out if I want to have separate colors for each kind of attendance, like what is a remote working color, what is a sick leave, etc. I want to have different colors, then we need to have that separated. So we need to change the shape and kind of data that we have from raw Excel file to a separate set of tables. And then once that is done, we will need to model this data This is when we set up connections between various tables. All of that would be done in the Power Pivot area of Power BI, but the cleaning and making dimension tables will be done in Power Query stage. Then there is an additional challenge, and this is a challenge that I didn't realize when I was doing it the first time, but only after I came to the challenge I realized that, oh, this has to be done, which is extract the images. So I'll write it down here, extract. I'll explain what this is as a challenge when we are actually doing it in Power Query. So as you can see, each employee's image is maintained as a URL. The URLs can be displayed as they are by Power BI and your browser. But when it comes to SVG based technique, the URLs are not exactly working. I think this is a current limitation with the SVG implementation in Power BI. So we had to actually extract the bytes of the data and then do conversions and all of that. I'll get there eventually. So that is the next step. And then we design. So this is where we make the necessary DAX code for SVGs and make the visuals. And set up filters. Filters would be our calendar filter as well as any other interactions between various components on the screen. All of that we will set it up. So these are the 3 stages. Along the way, we are going to encounter some challenges, some limitations, some problems with the way Power BI implements SVG and all of that. But this is basically a high-level design. So many times when you are implementing any kind of business intelligence or dashboards or data analysis projects, you may have a visibility of what these steps are going to look like, but occasionally you may not have visibility as well. So for example, while I was doing this work, I didn't know that there is going to be an extraction step. I just assumed we'll just do it and it'll work, but it was not working. And only after further digging, I realized that we had to do some extraction. So it's a good idea to have some rough sketch, but be flexible in your planning and your approach to the problem because new things can prop up and all of that. Final stage would be testing. This is when we want to make sure that it is actually producing the results as we want and nothing unwanted or undesired, etc. And then basically we present or we go live with this. So we implement it in our workplace and then get this feedback and then see, oh, can we have a graph here that shows how things are happening, or why is this so slow, or whatever. So all of that would come in when you present and get the feedback. And once that is there, then you may want to kind of go back and implement this again, either from this stage or go all the way back to the data stage and get new data to support these additional features or things that you may want to implement. So this is at a very high level how I would approach a project like this. Now, because this is a video, we're going to kind of zoom through many of these stages, but in real life, when you do this, it might happen over a period of a few weeks where lots of meetings will happen. Further inspiration may be drawn, like not just this one, maybe some other inspiration might come in, etc. All of that would happen. All right, so all good. I'll again leave a copy of this document in the video description, but this is fairly simple. So now let's get into the data. We're going to make this entire report in a brand new Power BI file. So I'm going to go into File, New, and then select a blank report. Let's start by bringing in the attendance data. We'll need to close this Excel file for that. And File, Home, Get Data from Excel Workbook. And I'm just going to point to that Excel file. I'll have a copy of this Excel file in the video description for you, by the way. We are going to need this attendance data file, which has that kind of a matrix attendance format for every employee, as well as the people dimension table. So both of these we're going to select, but this is not enough. So we'll need to do some data transformations. So we'll go into transform data, which is going to open our Power Query editor. Here, first up, let's take out these top rows, which are not helpful at all. So I'm also noticing that my Power Query adds the default data promotion of the first row as well as data type changes. So I'm just going to undo these steps or take them out and remove the rows, remove top 3 rows. Next up, we'll make this row as the header. And what we now want is we want to create a separate table for our calendar. And in this table, the attendance data table itself, we just want to maintain the date, not the day of week and holiday stuff, other things. Those will go and sit in the calendar table. So to do that, once this attendance data is there, I'm going to right click on this and create a duplicate query of that exact thing. And the second duplicate one, the one that we just created, I'm going to name this as calendar. And in this calendar table, we'll have the date, day of week, holiday. We don't need any of these other columns. So I'm going to select the first 3 columns by holding down Shift, right click, and then say remove other columns. So this will leave just these 3 columns. We'll come back and add more columns here. For now, let's go back to the attendance data. We don't need these columns here anymore. So I'll delete them, right click and remove, and select this column. And we want all of this information, but unpivoted so that we can do analysis better. So right click on the date column alone and then choose unpivot other columns. This is gonna basically turn our entire data into a 3-column structure. We'll have the date as is because this is the column from which we are starting unpivot other process. And the rest of the data all becomes 2 columns. One is attribute and the other is the value. So attribute is nothing but employee ID, and value is what their status is on that specific day, whether they're on call, on site, or on vacation, or working, or remote, or whatever. Wherever it is blank, it means they're absent or they're not there, but technically they're not absent because these could be weekend dates. Like for example, here you can see that 1st of Jan being a holiday, everybody has blank because they're not working. So we can leave the blank as it is. There is no problem with that. I'm just going to rename these columns as employee status. So those are the 2 columns. And now let's go into the calendar table itself. And in the calendar table, I'm going to add some more columns. So the day of week and holiday is fine. What we will do is we'll introduce few more columns so that it helps us with the data analysis. The columns that you need to add here depend all on your visualization needs. In our case, we want to create a calendar view like this. Now, in order to create a calendar view like this, I'm gonna use this example here. Essentially, what we can do is to make this, you can see that on the column level, there are 7 columns, 1 for each day of week. But every row is 1 week of the month. So this is being week 1, that is week 2, week 3, like that. So we need to know what is the day of week, what number that is, and what is the week of the month as a number. Then once we have those numbers, we can kind of design a grid where all of this can be placed. So let's go ahead and calculate all of these things. So we'll select this date, we'll go to add column, date option, and then go to month, and then week, and then here we have got a week of the month. So this will tell us what week of the month each day is. It will use a default notation of, I think a week begins on Sunday or something like that. But if you want, you can customize this. I'm not going to mess with that. We'll just leave as it is. The second thing is, again, we'll select the date, add day, and then day of week as an option. This will basically give us a number for each day. So we have got day of week and week of the month. You can see that I already have day of week here with the name of the day. So this will come up as day of week 1. I'm gonna name this as weekday. For our slicer, we also need to know what month it is. So I'm gonna select the date again and then add month, name of the month. So that will come up. We'll also need the number of the month so that we can implement sort order. If you don't know all of these steps and you're doing it, it's fine. You can always come back to Power Query and add these necessary columns as needed. But because I've already completed the project, I know what to add. So I'll select this date again, go here, month, and then month, so that we know the number. One final thing that I need is, for each day, I need to know what kind of a day it is. Is it a holiday, a working day, or a weekend? Now, if you see that here, they have got a holiday question mark column that kind of flags each day as what kind of day it is. So we know weekends, we know the holidays, but the holiday actually tells us what the holiday is. So is it New Year's Day? Is it Waitangi anniversary or something else? All of that is mentioned here, but we don't need that. We just need to know, is it a holiday, weekend, or a regular day? So only 3 kinds of tags are needed. So we're going to add a conditional column that kind of tells us what kind of day it is. So again, we can use conditional column, and this would be day type. And here we're going to use the holiday column to kind of do a check. So if the holiday equals a weekend, then output would be 2. And if holiday is equals lowercase null, that means it's blank. This is a regular day, so that would be 1. If neither of these, then it will be 3. So here 1 would be regular day, 2 is weekend, and 3 is any kind of holiday. Click OK, and we will have the data type added. If you want, you can add more columns. For now, this is enough for me, but as we are building the report, if we realize that, oh wait, we need that other thing, I'll come back and do. I'm also worried about this blank spaces here. It looks like there is some extra blank rows coming in through Excel import. So I'm going to check this, and delete any null rows from our calendar table so that there's only dates here. The calendar table should not have any blank values. Finally, we'll go back to attendance data and right click and create one more duplicate. Either duplicate or reference is fine. I'm just going to make a duplicate, and this one will be status. And in the status table, I'm gonna select these two columns, right click and remove them. So we only have status, and I'll select this and then remove duplicates. So we only have all the possible status values here. We are not gonna specifically do anything else for this dimension, but this is a good idea to have this kind of a dimension table in our model. You can either generate it like this, or you can bring it from your time tracking system or somewhere else. Because once you have this status, you could, for example, assign color codes for each kind of status and flag them differently in the visuals if you want. For now, I'm not going to bother with that, but it is good to have this table. So all of our dimension tables are now generated, 4 tables. We made these 4 tables from one Excel file. Let's go ahead and load this into Power BI. So close and apply. Like I said, this is how I have done it initially. Only after implementing some of the SVG, I realized that, oh, I need to extract the images as well. So we'll cross that bridge as we go there. For now, we are not going to worry about it. So now that this is there, let's go to the model. I'll flash the steps here. You can see that data, and then the next step is data preparation. So we've done the cleaning. We've done the making dimension part. Let's go ahead and model the tables, and we'll worry about the extraction step later on. You might notice that Power BI has already done some of this connection bits. So for example, status, it was able to connect because the columns are named same. I'm gonna take the date and map it to the calendar here, and select the date columns in both places, click OK. I'll also right click on the calendar table and use the mark as date table option, because this is actually a date table for us. So we'll choose this on and save. This way, this would be used as the calendar instead of the inbuilt one that Power BI creates. Finally, the people will use employee ID and map it to employee here and click OK. So here is our simplified star schema, with this being the fact table that tells us what happened for every employee. But for more details on dates or employees or statuses, I can go to these other tables. So now that everything is there, let's go ahead and start building the pieces of the puzzle. For this, we're going to go into the visual. We'll start off by creating a canvas background for this. As I have taken inspiration from this dashboard, I wanted to have my Power BI report look as closely to this as possible. So what I did is I went to PowerPoint and created a canvas background for our report. This is how I have generated it. This is actually the completed one, but I'll quickly show you the steps. So what I did is I added a new slide, removed everything on this slide, and first added a big rectangle for the background. Made it as big as the page itself and took out the outline from this, and fill color is somewhat dark like that. So this is the actual background itself, and now we are going to add one more rectangle. This would be a rounded rectangle that kind of sits in like that. Bring it to the center of the page and adjust the roundness so that it kind of looks all right. Next, select this and take out outline from this also and fill it with a gradient. So I'm going to use gradient, more gradients, and set the gradient. The gradient requires a little bit of fine tuning because I want to have basically 3 gradients. One color here, one color there, and kind of like middle, but these 2 colors are essentially same. So this requires a little bit of mucking around, but once you get it right, you will be able to see that. So on this corner, we are going to use somewhat of a yellow color like that. In the middle here, we are going to use a color like this. We're going to make one more stop of the same color, and final stop is our yellow color. So we'll get a gradient like this, and I'm going to change this to this style to a radial style. And now you'll start to see yellow and yellow on these corners. We want the colors to be on this side and that side. So now that that comes up like that, you just have to tweak it until you get something like this. And you can adjust every little thing about this. In fact, the way I have done it here is I've used a little bit more technique by adding further shapes and setting the gradients on them so that the blending looks a bit more natural. But this is fine. Finally, we'll select this rectangle and we will add drop shadow effect to this. So shadow cast to the bottom, and let's make it 80% transparent, 98% size, and 20 pixels blur and 10 pixels further down. Maybe adjust this to, again, after playing with this a little bit, you will get a nice shadow effect like that. So once the background is ready, you would want to select all of these things, including the background rectangle. So everything is now grabbed, right click, save as picture, and save our background. So I've saved this as BG1, but this new one, I'm going to save this as BG2. So you can use PowerPoint. You can also use other tools like Canva or Figma or anything else, Adobe Express, to generate these backgrounds, or you can even download some from online if there is anything available for you. The only thing that you want to keep in mind is make sure the aspect ratio is 16:9, and if possible, the pixels for this, like the height and width, are same as your Power BI canvas. Now let's go back to Power BI, and here we'll go into the format ribbon and go to canvas settings. Adjust the type from 16:9 to custom, because the default size is 720 by 1280 pixels, and that is really too small. For example, my monitor is way bigger than this, so I'm gonna increase these pixels. So we'll go to the custom and 1080 by 1920, and let's align this in the middle, and now go into the canvas background and set the background as our BG. I'm just going to use BG1 and click OK. It's going to be 100% transparent, but once you reduce the transparency, it'll come in, and it's going to stretch it out. So the image fit is normal. I'm going to actually fit this so that everything is kind of shrunk into the canvas area. Beautiful. So now that the background is ready, let's start building the visuals. There's essentially 4 or 5 different visuals that we want to build. I'm going to show you the completed one again. As you can see here, we have got a title that kind of tells us what's happening. We'll build this title towards the end. Logo of our company, this can be easily imported. We'll do that towards the end. A slicer to select the month, and a calendar view, as well as an employee view and a KPI view. So these are all the key ingredients that we need to build. Now, in order to build these, we'll need to actually write some measures. So we're going to first write some measures, build them out, and then design these KPIs using SVG. So to hold all the measures in our report, you can kind of put them in different tables, but when you have got multiple measures, it's a good idea to create a measure table. So for this, you can go into the home ribbon, enter data, and leave everything as it is, and the table name is underscore measures. Load this table. So now you have created kind of like a blank table. There's really nothing there, a simple column. It has no values, but this is a measures table. You can add all the measures here and then structure this to be a measures table. That way you don't have to look in multiple tables to find your measures. So in this measures table, let's start by calculating some key things. So for example, I want to start off by saying, what was the total number of days? How many productive days are available and how much of that is worked? So we can right click, add a measure. We'll call this as total work days. And this is nothing but count rows of attendance data. Now here we are assuming every day is a work day, including weekends and holidays. This is because we have some employees who go on call and whatnot. The actual working days would exclude anything that is a holiday or a weekend. So you may have to name these things differently. For example, okay, we'll just call this as total days, right? This is how much days is this. Because we have got 25 employees, this will be for a month with 30 days, it'll be 30 times 25. That's how much this number will be, because every employee is applied one, because every employee appears once in that attendance data. Let's take a look at this. It's a good idea to see these things as you're building, then that way you have clarity of how everything is looking. So I'm gonna add a new card visual, and this way we can actually see multiple measures in one go. And in this, I'm gonna add total days. So it comes up as 3K. This is because we have got 4 months worth of data for 25 people. So everything, this is like our total productivity possible. Now I want to know how much of this is actually work, like how many days people have appeared for work. So for this, we can create one more measure, total days worked, or total attendance. I think this could be like total attendance really. And this means the employee is there working on that specific day. So this would be calculate total days when the status is one of the below. The below statuses would be they're present, they're on site, or they're on call, or they're remote. Those are the 4 statuses. If they are any of these, that means they're working. So for this, we can say status table status column in curly brackets present. I'm gonna new line this present, on call, on site, or remote. Close the curly brackets, close this bracket. So this will basically tell us how many days when the employees are present. We are using the status table, not the status column in the attendance data, because we've got that dimension, we might as well use it. Let's add that as well. So you can see that 3000 days is total available, 2000 is what we worked. So given these 2 numbers, we can actually calculate the attendance percentage. But before that, we need to know how many are actually working days. So we'll do a total working days. And this is nothing but how many days are how many days have how many days are not weekends or holidays. So we will do one more calculate total days. This time we will say calendar day type. Remember day type is 1 for working days, 2 for weekends, and 3 for holidays. So it has to be 1. Whenever it is 1, how much is this number? So we'll do this, and let's add that as well. Get an error for this, I think. Okay, so type of text with type of integer. This is because in the calendar table, day type is thought to be a text value. So I'm going to go into Power Query quickly, transform data, and make sure that in the calendar table, day type is set ABC123. So I'm going to right click and then change type to whole number so that it comes in as a number. Let's try this again. So total working days is 2K. So essentially the attendance is almost there, like 100% or 98%. So now right click and then make a new measure. And this measure would be attendance percentage is divide total attendance with total working days. And let's format this as percentage with 1 decimal point, and let's add that. And I will select this, go to layout and show in a single column. Let's see 6 cards at a time. So you can see that our attendance percentage at the overall level is 88.2%. This seems about right. We have got 12% of absence. This could be due to vacation, sick leaves, or whatever. Now let's go ahead and add a slicer on the month so we can actually see these numbers by a month. This is all still playing as we are building the DAX so that we can kind of make sure that we are going on the right track. So we will add a button slicer. Select this, put it there, and then go to calendar and add month name there. So we'll get April, February, Jan, March. If you're wondering what is going on, they're appearing in alphabetical order. We want to see them in the correct order, but first let's test this. If I select January, I can see that in January, our total productivity is 775. 439 is the attendance. 500 is the actual total number of work days available in January, and 87.8 is attendance percentage. Let's go ahead and set this sort order correctly. For this, we'll go into the table view, select calendar table, and select the month name column. And using the column tools, sort by column, we'll tell that this column should be sorted by that number. So we'll use sort by month name on month column. While we are there, day of week should be sorted by weekday column, so that if and when we use that, it will also appear in the correct order. So now Jan, Feb, March, April appear in that order. Again, perfect. I'm gonna change this to single row, 4 buttons, and we will put it like that. So I can select any month and that will show me these numbers. Let's see what else we need. We need to know what is the total number of days in itself. The month of January, how many days are there? How many working days are there? So that it sets the context. I mean, for 439 and 500 is good, but that is the overall productivity. What about the number of days? So let's add a few more measures. New measure, total days in month. This is nothing but count rows of calendar table. As we are using the slicer on the calendar table, if I add this, I'll see 31 for January, 28 for February, 31 for March, and 30 for April. Fairly self-explanatory there. We can also add one more measure. Total work days in month is calculate total days in a month which are of the workday type. So day type is equal to 1, and we can add that also here, and we'll see that, for example, in April, even though 30 days are there, 19 are work days. January 31, 20, February 28, 19. So far, I hope everything is clear. Creating these measures is really simple. Now comes the fun part. What I want to build a calendar view, and for each week in that calendar grid, I want to show each day what is the attendance percentage, as well as what kind of day it is. We could also show other things there, but we'll get started from simple stuff first. So to create the calendar view, we can use the matrix visual in Power BI. So if you add a matrix, I'm just going to make it that big. You can see that we can put rows and columns. So on the rows, I want to see the week numbers. So I'm going to go into calendar, and week of the month, I'm going to add that into rows. So there's 5 weeks in February, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will appear. In Jan, 5 weeks. But if I go to March, there are 6 weeks. Again, fairly self-explanatory. Now on the column levels, let's add the day of week or weekday. That is fine. I'm going to add day of week. So it starts from Monday, goes to Sunday. That's how the order is. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So for each week of the month, each Monday, whatever is the intersection, that's what we want to see. So for example, here in the intersection, what I want to know is what is the attendance percentage. So I can take the attendance percentage and put that into values, and I'll see that. It kind of looks funny to me that there's a blank in the middle, and we don't have the Saturday and Sunday values because we don't have any attendance in those days. So technically the attendance value is null or blank, and if it is blank, then Power BI automatically takes it out. That's one of the crazy things with these visuals. We could, for example, right click on this and use the show items with no data on both of these, so that we can kind of force it to display Saturday and Sunday. And if you're wondering why that one is blank, that's because that is a holiday in February, 6th of February being a holiday. It doesn't have any attendance, so that's what is coming up. And I can select different things and I can see that. Again, everything looks all right, but this is quite not impressive. If you look at the actual inspiration we wanted, this is how that one is. So it has this kind of a nice rounded rectangle, the date in one corner, and some other stuff here. What I wanted is I wanted to implement all of this. So for this purpose, we are going to actually, instead of using a measure, create an SVG drawing that tells me this. So the SVG drawing involves drawing some rectangles and all of that. If you're not completely sure how to do these things, it's a good idea to use an SVG tool. So for example, you can use the Boxy app, the one that I talked about in the previous session, and create some rectangles and all of that. That's how I have done. Between that video and this video, I've also discovered that there is another app called Inkscape that you can use to draw more comprehensive SVGs. The code that it generates seems to be much more verbose, but gives you more options. So you could use one of these, or you can even use Figma to generate these things. I've already done all of that work, so I'm just gonna kind of cut short that process and show you the SVGs. Before we create the SVG measure, we want to show the date itself in the matrix, so we need to know what that number is. So for example, this would be 1, that would be 2, that would be 3. So we need to know what day of month it is, and our calendar table doesn't really have any value that can tell me this. We have got week of month, weekday, month name, month, date type. So I'm gonna go into Power Query quickly and select the calendar table and select the date column, go to add column, date, day, day. This would be just the actual day itself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 31, then 28, like that. Let's go ahead and bring this back. So now we have got the day column, and let's create a measure to harvest this. So we'll create this measure. We call this as current day. This is equal to selected value of calendar day. If I see that, so if I put this into current day into the matrix, you'll see what day it is. So 1, 2, 3, like that. Of course, it's showing the attendance percentage also. So now you can understand the problem. This matrix tells me everything, but it looks really ugly. So here we do need that SVG measure. So let's start by creating that SVG. We'll right click, new measure, and this would be SVG for calendar. And we'll declare some variables where CD stands for current day, and where attendance percentage is attendance percentage. Now attendance percentage would come up as 84, but on the screen it is shown as 84%, but when you refer it as a variable, it will be 0.84333 or whatever nonsense that is. So we'll need to actually turn that into a displayable format. So we'll create one more variable, attendance percentage disp. This is equal to format attendance percentage in 0% format code. We'll also need to know what kind of a day it is. Is it a working day? Is it a holiday? Or is it a weekend? So we'll select a day type, and this is equal to selected value of day type in the calendar table. As the context of matrix, at any point there is only one date, all of these values, this selected value as well as current day, they'll all evaluate to be a single value of whatever that is. So for these variables, if I take a specific date like 3rd of January, the values here would be, this would be 3 because it's 3rd of January. This would be whatever is the attendance of that date. This would be whatever is the attendance on that date as a percentage. And this would be whatever is the kind of day. 3rd of January being a work day, this would be 1. So all of these values will come, and that will repeat for all the values in the month. So now that all these variables are there, we'll make one more variable. This variable tells us what kind of a circle to draw in the calendar grid. If you remember, the view that we are going for is kind of like a rounded rectangle. Imagine this is a rounded rectangle, and on the corner here, we want to show the date. So 3rd of January, this will be 3. Excuse my hand drawing there. And in this corner here, I want to show a circle that tells me what kind of day it is, a working day, holiday, or weekend. So 3rd of January, that circle will be green color. And then what is the attendance percentage? So imagine this is 88%. That value should be shown there. So this is really what we are trying to go for roughly. So we need to draw a circle and fill it with a different color. So we want to know what those colors are. So here I'm gonna get kind of these colors. So day type color, and here we can use switch function to decide. There's only 3 day types, but if you've got 7 or 8 different date types, switch would be even more helpful. And what we'll do is switch true, and day type is equal to 1. Then the color code for that. So here the color code that I want to use for working day is some sort of a green color. If you know RGB, G is for green, the middle values. So we can kind of set this. It's a good idea to actually generate these colors first and then come back. But we're going to kind of come up with something and then go ahead and change that. So 00, that'll be perfect green. And then day type equal to 2. this is a weekend. This would be kind of like a yellow color, so something like that. Again, I'm not really sure if that would be yellow or not, but we'll worry about that later. If neither of these, then it's a holiday, so we'll go with some sort of a red color. These are the codes. These are hex codes. Again, you don't have to worry if you don't know about these. We can always come back and change that. So now that everything is there, let's start by generating the SVG. So I'm going to return the SVG code. This is where there's a lot of boilerplate that needs to go in. So I'm going to copy paste most of this code and then change it. So this is the code. The top part is fairly self-explanatory. We are trying to send in some data as an SVG, but the image data, and then this XML tag. The view box is setting the resolution for our calendar grid SVG thing. So it'll be 150 by 150. And we start by drawing a rectangle that is 90% width and 90% height of our view box with the roundness of 10 pixels, and fill it with that color. And then we have the current day as a text, and then we have attendance percentage as a text, and then we are also going to draw a circle, fill it with that day type color. So this is the SVG measure. I'm going to commit this, and let's see that. I'm going to take out these guys and add the SVG for calendar. Now everything comes up as the code itself instead of the SVG. This is because we created the measure, but we haven't told Power BI that this needs to be treated as an image. So I'm going to go into select this measure, and using the measure tools data category, change this to an image URL. All right, so that's done. And boom, doesn't it already look beautiful? Everything is here, and we look for all the information. Of course, it does add these total columns. So I'm going to first take them out, and then we'll format everything. So disable the totals. It's kind of looking all right. And let's test this out. If I select different month, I can see that. Of course, the colors look a little bit too strong, this green and the weekend colors. So we'll need to design some colors. I'm going to go into PowerPoint and quickly grab some color codes for us to use. So for example, for the weekend, I want to use some sort of a yellow color. So I'm going to go into select any box or anything like that, and go into fill color, more fill colors, and select that, go to custom, and then make a note of this. So that is the thing. Come back to SVG, and day type 2 is the weekend, so paste that code there. Then for the working day, I want to use some sort of a green, but nothing too strong, just enough to kind of get a sense that, okay, so that should be fine. Again, copy that, paste it here. And for a holiday, I want to know that that's not a working day, so we'll select something like that. I think that should do. Copy this and paste it. Let's do this, and now the colors look much better, and everything is looking great. We'll need to make some tweaks here. So I'm going to select this matrix, go to the format area, and individually format a lot of things. We're going to start off with the grid, and let's add horizontal and vertical grid lines so that the grid lines do show up, and then go to the border and select column header, turn off the border for that, row header, and turn off the border. Maybe add the border, but change the color. So I'm gonna change to something like that. And then go to the options and padding. Let's give it 5 pixel padding, so there is a little bit of breathing room there. And already it is looking great, but I'm gonna start with image size. So it's by default 75 because our image is 150 by 150. I'm gonna change this to 150. Now I can see that is too big. Let's start with 100 by 100. Okay, I think that looks fine. And we'll take out these alternate row colors because they're not helpful at all. So for this, we'll need to go into the values. Background color needs to be white for both kinds of rows. And then start by tweaking the column headers and everything. So I'm gonna make these 14 pixels, bold them, and change the color down a little bit. row headers also 14 pixels, bold them, and change the color. Now you can see that the week of the month is actually showing as a number. I didn't really like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly jump into Power Query, go to calendar, and week of the month, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to prefix this with the letters WK. So select this column, transform, format, add prefix, and add WK like that. So everything becomes week 1, week 2 like this. This actually looks much better on the screen. And now we get something like this. So this looks, I really like that. I'm gonna take out the bold effect and we will get this. The calendar is looking great. I can kind of select this and I can see this. If you want, you can add more information here. By the way, you can add other stuff like what percentage of employees were on holiday that day or anything else for that matter. I'm kind of leaving all of this to your imagination. If you go into the SVG card, you can see that you can kind of nest any number of items there. So I have put 2 texts and 1 circle inside a rectangle, but you can really have any number of things there. Just go nuts and try this out. It's a good idea to prototype this in an editor like this, get the code and then copy the code and customize it in Power BI. That way you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel. So now that the calendar is ready, let's go ahead and build the employee card as well. For that, I'm just going to make some space. I'm just going to adjust everything, move it here and move this thing there. And let's build the employee card here. For calendar, because we have got rows and columns, we use it the matrix, but employees, everybody is there. So we could use a table visual for that. Alternatively, you could also use the new card or the new button slicer visuals for that. Both of them do accept images. I had some issues with the new card as it was not rendering images due to some sort of a bug, but I hope it will be fixed down the line in April or May 2025 releases of Power BI. For now, I'm just going to use the table visual because it's more straightforward one to use. So we will add a table, and in this table, what we want to do is we want to show each employee as a card. Now to show the employees as a card, I'll start by writing the code and then we'll kind of come to a point where the image cannot be displayed and then we'll fix that. So let's start by creating the measure for employee card. Right click, new measure, and I'm going to paste the code and then I'll explain. This is the employee card measure. We are declaring a whole bunch of variables, the name of the employee by using selected value, and picture of the employee, what is their team, how much is the total days. I think here I'm using count rows. I can directly use total days in a month. And then we are counting various kinds of statuses for them, like how many days they are present. So whether they're present or remote, that we consider as present, how many days they're sick, how many are on vacation, and how many are on call or on site. This is when they are expected to show up during a holiday or a weekend, and attendance percentage and all of that. So once these numbers are all calculated, this is the SVG that I'm generating. As you can see, this SVG kinds of makes a rectangle and then put some text inside. We'll see how this is. The key bit is the image of the employee comes in from that URL using a href. So let's add this and let's select the table. Now, if I directly put that there, obviously it's going to only generate one card, and even that card itself is incorrect. It doesn't look right to me. This is because if I just put a measure in the table, it's going to aggregate for all the employees. So we'll need to split this by employee. So we're going to go into people table and take something like employee ID, so that one row per employee is there, and then now add the employee card. So everybody's employee card's SVG code comes up here, including a total row. And now we can select this employee card data category and change this to image URL, and we will get the images for everybody. You can see that the images do show up. They're little small, but I can adjust the image properties for the table. And let me just see what size we are making here. I think we are making 400 by 200. So I'm gonna go with 200 height, 400 width, so that we can get their images. And you can see that the card shows up, but not the image of the employee. So this is the problem that I also had. And then I realized that this image tag is not working. I mean, it does work, but it's not able to read a URL and get the URL in runtime and then show that. So this seems to be a limitation of the SVG implementation in Power BI, whereas if you use this kind of a code in a browser on a website, it works normally because SVG is capable of getting other URLs and embedding them inside. But Power BI, for whatever reason, they're not implementing this, or maybe they will implement in future. So the alternative here is actually get the bytes of the image and then feed those bytes directly to the image itself. This is a little bit kind of confusing, but it didn't take long for us to figure this out. I'm not the one to figure this out. There's lots of literature and articles and everything in it. But the one article that really helped me was Chris Webb's storing large images in Power BI datasets. I'll leave a link to this again. Chris is a Microsoft employee and he's a Power Query expert, as well as many other things in Power BI as well. So he talks about how to store images and how to do this. This is basically about large images, whereas our images are not that large. Nevertheless, the image needs to come in. So we'll need to now go back to Power Query. So I'm going to go into transform data once again and go to the people table. For everybody, then URL is there. What we want is we want to ask Power Query, hey, can you actually go to the URL, download the bytes, and then show me those bytes here itself. So here we will add a column, custom column, and I'm going to call this as image bytes, and we are going to use web contents function. This is a function that can read any web page or URL and download the bytes from that. So web contents of the picture is what we want. And click OK. It's going to ask you about some privacy things because you're taking a URL on your file and then going to the web. So we can continue and then we can say ignore, or you can set everything to public. It doesn't really matter. You will get the binary. So if I select this binary, you will see that the file is now downloaded. We don't want the binary in itself. We want now these bytes to be taken and actually printed as a string value there. So for this, there is another function. I'm going to edit this step and use the code binary to, so it's called binary to text. What that can do is it can take any binary values like the files and turn them into text, and you can specify the encoding. The encoding that you need to use for SVG is base 64 encoding. Now, there's other encodings as well, but for SVG to read that image and show it on the screen, it has to be base 64. So this would be base binary encoding.base 64. That's the type of encoding that we need to use. And when you click OK, you'll now get the bytes. So this is basically the bytes for each image. They'll show up. It might be taking a while. For my computer, it has already cached all of these, so they come up. There's another limitation here. This is actually coming up as a text. So when Power BI and DAX sees this text, it can only read up to the text values of 32,000 characters. Anything more, it will not process the DAX correctly. So this is where I had to actually redesign my images. That's why you see that the URL now has a small in it. Initially, my images were much bigger. But 32,000 is essentially 32 kilobytes of image size. Because the SVG also has other kinds of stuff there, I had to make them much smaller than 32,000 to make sure that they're working and there is no memory problems in Power BI. But if you go to the article that Chris is writing, he's talking about how to store large images. So initially I went down this route, but I realized that even though I can get the data, Power BI is not capable of showing that reliably. It was crashing once in a while. So I had to go down and make the images smaller. So this technique is somewhat limited, but it does work fine. I'm happy with this, and I think it is great for storing smaller images like emojis or icons and stuff like that, as well as simpler profile pictures. Anyhow, the image comes up. There's still one problem. This is just the bytes. You need to actually prefix this with a text value that tells Power BI that this is actually base 64 encoded image. So the prefix would be, so we'll select this and then we go into transform, format, add prefix, and this is the prefix, data, colon image slash jpg because this is JPEG files, but if you have got PNG, then you would use PNG and then base 64 comma. All right, so that now that the image bytes are there, I'm gonna go to home, close and apply. So the image bytes now appear in our data model as well. This is when actually all the images are fetched. You can see that right now it is actually accessing my website. This will take a while, but eventually all the images will come in. Okay, so the images bytes are already here. Let's go ahead and modify our SVG employee card. So we'll go to the employee card. Employee picture is not the picture, but this would be the bytes. So once the bytes are there in the href of the image, if I send the actual bytes itself, it's capable of rendering that. Let me just show that. There you go. You can see that the images are coming up nicely. Of course, there's no image for the total employee because there's no single selected value there. So I'm gonna turn off the total rows for our table and the images are there. You can kind of make this narrow enough and disable word wrap and all of those things so that column is basically not there. It was only there just so we could kind of slice this by employees, and everybody is now nicely showing up. I can kind of select a specific employee. I can see what happened to them in that month, and I can see the summaries here. So this is how the skeleton and everything of the dashboard is constructed. The next step is to add some summaries and storytelling and nicely format everything. So let's go do that quickly. To format this table, I'm gonna first start off by setting some background colors. So I'm gonna go into values and take out the alternative background color. So everything is just this. And we are gonna go into the style background and let's set that kind of a background around that. So that is how that would look, and set the visual border of 20 pixels in the same color. So everybody looks like this. We may have to adjust some of these things, and then we'll go into the values, and the background color will match with our main background color itself. Okay, so now every card looks like basically a card. There's some grid lines there. I'm gonna go back and go to the grid, turn off these grid lines, and we don't need borders on that either. So that's there. And I think the column header has a text wrap, so I'll turn that off. Let's make this 14 points, and let's take that to light and then bold that, and let's just make this 18 points actually. And then I'm going to rename this employee card to employee, so that's what would show up, and we'll change the color of that as well to this background. Okay, so that looks all right. The cards look super nice, and I can select any one to understand what happens, and I can go into different month, and whatever month I select, I can see what is the total days. 19 present, they don't take sick leave, vacation is 22, and on call is 1. I think vacation is counting including the weekends, so I'm gonna adjust the logic for this. I think sorry, there's a 2 here, that's what is showing up wrong. Okay, so that looks nice, and let's do the same for this guy here. I'm gonna make it nice and big, and start by setting the visual border in the white color with the 20 pixels roundness, and adjust this. Let's do the same for this one as well. Background is on, visual border in the white color, 20 pixels, and let's adjust the padding as well. Let's make these 10 pixels, and let's go to the layout. This all fine. We'll go into the cards themselves and turn off the border. Background is fine, and we'll add accent bar and put the accent bar on the top and change the color to something like that, 1 pixel. So there's an accent bar on the top, and let's add the title. The title would be KPIs. In the middle, Sego UI Lite, 14 points. Bold, let's just make this 18 points, and let's go to the callout values and center align them as well. I'm going to change this din to Sego UI bold and label 14 points. And this is 45 is too big. Let's just make this 28 points. So that comes up nice. So now everything has got that sort of a nice roundness to it. This one, I think maybe we can shrink this a little bit without showing the horizontal scroll bar, except this slicer. So let's do the same for this slicer also. Let's add visual border, 20, and let's turn off the title. That is obvious. And let's just adjust the size of this and place it there. And for this, we'll need to do more formatting. So I'm going to go into buttons, and I think we don't need borders around that. Whatever is selected is obvious. And then by default, this is how they look. I'm going to select the selected option. So for the selected button, the fill color would be something strong. And yeah, I think that's obvious. Then we can go into the callout values. The values, I'm going to change this to Sego UI bold, 14 points. And actually Sego UI would be the value. And then selected, we're going to bold that. So all right, we can try different things. I'm going to show you how the one I have designed looks like. So this is how that looks like. I think I've used rounded edges and a different color for that, but that's that. Let's add one more label that says what is the attendance in the month. So for this, I'm gonna make this a little bit like that, and let's make a new measure. We'll call this as report title, and this is equal to var attpct disp is equal to format attendance percentage 0%, where cell month equal to selected value of the month name, return attendance percentage display cell month. So that's going to return a sentence that says 88% of attendance in April. Let's add that. Let's collapse these, and let's add a card visual. Place that there, and let's add the report title there. So this is going to come up like that. We're going to tweak some of these things. We don't need the label. Callout value is Sego UI light, 24 points, bold, and I don't think we can adjust the alignment, so I'm going to change this to that, and then just let's take out all the backgrounds from this so that kind of just looks like text floating in there. And you can bring in the logo, but you can select different ones, and whatever you select, for example, February has much lower attendance than others, and that'll show up. You can also add other kinds of graphs and other things here. What I did notice is if I start putting too many things in here, because the SVG is kind of like a delicate flower, sometimes the report would crash. So I'm very happy with what we have achieved, but I think there is more possibilities. The problem with SVG crashing seems to be happening because I'm using the images and I'm bringing them in and making the bytes as part of the SVG measure, which means the measure text itself is about 25,000 characters or something, and that somehow is really spooking the DAX query engine behind skins. So if you don't have images, I think you are good to go. You can really have very long SVG measures. That's what people have done. I've shown you what some of the others have achieved with that, especially Kerry Kolosko and others. So feel free to check that out and take some patterns and use that. All in all, this has been a really fruitful journey for me to kind of dig this out, figure it out and solve it and learn the whole thing myself. And I hope you had fun as well watching this tutorial and picking some clues and ideas. Let me know what you think in the comments below and share your SVG work with me as well. All the best. Bye.